Well, hello, welcome to the channel and thanks for joining me. Today we're picking up with the JVC 9415 LSB, and in part one we actually looked at a couple of these units. In fact, one was broken, had a broken chassis, and there was damage to the tuner mechanism on one of them, and the cassette kind of worked a little bit. The other one had a dodgy cassette mech but a good radio and a decent case, so we're going to make a good one out of the two. And in the last episode we actually stripped them both down, removed the radio boards, cleaned the chassis of the good one that was intact, put the radio board into that, and the next stage now is to choose one of these cassette mechs that we're going to work on today. We'll give this a decent service, get some belts in here, do the lubrication and clean the heads and all the sorts of stuff we might need to do on the mech, and then we'll hopefully get that into the unit, get it all up and running, deep clean it and see how we get on. So first thing then is to choose which one we want to work on. And so it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, but this one generally looks a little bit brighter, slightly less yellowing, and I think the pinch roller arguably looks a bit better. Yeah, there's nothing in it, to be honest. They're both really good mechs. So okay, I think, well, we'll plump for one, shall we? Let's lose this one and work on this one today. And the first thing I think I'll do is just get rid of some of the surface dust and grime. Obviously there'll be a lot more to clean once we get inside, but let's at least do ourselves a favour by making it slightly nicer to handle. And there's some of the detritus that's coming off of this already. So it's always nice, just more pleasant to work with if it's slightly cleaner. Years of grime, grease and what have you just sneaking in there. But of course remembering that these were greased at the factory, obviously to help the sliders work properly, but the dirt and the grime does kind of stick to it in time and over the years. But anyway, that's not too bad. Another gratuitous look at the that's come off of there, because it makes my girlfriend really squeamish. It freaks her out when she sees all that, so that's just for her. She's welcome. Right, okay, so I think the first thing we'll do, we'll worry about cleaning the heads and everything else later, but let's crack this open so we can actually get to what we need to see. To that end, the first thing we'll do, I think, is remove the screws. So there should be one just up here, there's one there I think, and one there. I believe these hold the board to the mech, and I'm going to take a quick photo as well, always worth doing that. Careful not to lose the washers. So having removed the screws 1, 2 and 3 from the board, let's see if we can peel this back now. It feels tight. What's holding that? That's the motor. Right, that's the motor being held back here now. Quite a short cable, unfortunately. It's funny, but when you go back at all these sort of 40 years, 50 years after these things were built, I guess they never really thought that through. And we've had to desolder a load of wires, as you will have seen in part 1, from where we actually had to get the VU meters, the power supply, speaker connections, all sorts of stuff away from the board, for the sake of an extra 2 or 3 inches of motor cable there. We'd be able to probably sort of book fold the entire thing over, but instead we've now also got to remove the motor, which, although not the end of the world, it just makes things a bit trickier, because we are ultimately trying to repair and restore the tape mech. And of course, if, let's just get this off, there we go, if you've got no power to the motor, it can be a bit trickier to see what's going on. Right, what's next? What's next? Still feels a bit tight, so what's actually pulling there? So I think I'm actually going to just gently prop that up, I think. So I'm going to get some foams across there just to prop that for a minute. Then we'll have a look at the this belt. Rightio. So the belt itself, there is only the one, and I've got to say, it doesn't feel too bad. It doesn't feel too bad at all. It is a bit dry looking, to be fair. It will have seen better days, and pound to the proverbial that it won't be beautifully round when we take it off. I'm sure it will have some sort of distortion to the shape. So we'll get that off in a bit and have a look. And also we've got the counter belt here as well. So I think I'll get that one off first. Let's have a look. Let's take the brake off. Okay, I'm just testing. You probably can't see that. I've done this kind of upside down and back to front a little bit, but just take the brake off there. And I can see the counter going round. So the actual counter belt itself isn't far off, to be honest. Yeah, it's not far off. But I think it'd still be nice to get a new one on there. And also just to spec a new one up, to be fair. Just to be nice just to get a new kit put together so we know what size that is. So we'll get that one off, which is just there. And then as for the main drive belt, let's just get that screw out. So for this we'll need a little bit of acetone. We'll just soften this glue or paint or varnish or whatever it is. That'll allow us to lift this, and I'm hopeful we should get enough clearance just under the thrust contact there that we should be able to pull this out and have that away under there. Ah, there we go. So we didn't even have to adjust it anyway. Good. Well, there's the belt. As I say, it's more of a rectangle than a circle. So it wasn't too bad, but I think what I'll do is I'll go and measure that up. Yeah, there's your classical sort of guitar pick shape. So I'll measure that up, we'll spec that, get new belts on order, clean these pulleys up, get some rubber renew, I think on the idler. The switch looks nice and clean, the leaf switch, that's good. Maybe just check the mech, see if it needs re-greasing and that sort of thing. Right, anyway, I'm going to go and measure up these belts, get them on order, because the sooner we can sort that, the sooner we can put it back together again. Okay, here we go then. So it's actually the next day now, and the belts have arrived, so we're good to go on that front, which is awesome. We've got the two new belts, the main drive belt and the counter belt, so we'll get them on in a bit. But first, just want to give everything a bit of a clean. Of course, we can get to the amp board now, so let's just clean the function switch and the arrays play bar, because I remember originally that was quite squealy. Won't have been used in a very long time. So just get a bit of lube in there as well. And of course, just remember when we put this back together later that we've got to line the function switch actuator up with the actual switch on the board. Otherwise we'll be in for all sorts of trouble a bit later. Right, good stuff. Right, let's just clean some of these rubbers up a minute then. So we'll just get a bit of alcohol first. We're just cleaning these idlers a little bit. Haven't got to go too mad. I'll do the same for the flywheel as well, just on the contact surface. Again, barely anything's come off of that, but it's always worth doing it whilst we're here. We'll also just clean the pause switch as well. I just think these mechs are proper cool, these old ones. Proper electrical kind of brake on the switch, rather than a mechanical action with the pinch roller moving. Love that. Right. So we'll turn you over. And same again, just on these rubbers. They still feel remarkably fresh, I've got to say, after all this time. Yeah, they feel good. Just checking against the brake, and they're stopping just fine. Just going to clean this transfer wheel as well, and a bit of detritus from around the edges. I've got to say, it's very bright. It's still very clean in here for all of its 40 or 50 years. Also just clean the capstan. And a fresh one just for the heads, which again are in really nice condition actually. Very clean. Very clean. No corrosion. No ferrite to speak of, to be honest, either. And the pinch roller itself is actually surprisingly clean, but we'll go ahead and clean that anyways, as a matter of course. And I might just put some rubber renew on there as well, just to try and freshen it up. It doesn't feel too hard, but it won't do any harm, just to get a bit of tackiness back into the grip on that pinch roller. And you can kind of hear that nice squeaky rubber sound. That's good. Nice condition. Good stuff. Happy with that. I'll just make sure that the mech is running freely now, so I'll just drop a tape in there just to get the mech working. Play, stop, fast forward and rewind are working nicely. It's snapping back in really easily. Good. Yep, happy with that. Might just give it a gentle degrease and a tiny bit more grease on some of these parts, but other than that, we're ready to get the belts on. Okay, so we've got the old belts off here. Got the new ones ready to go on, so let's have a look, see what we've got with these. As I say, 2 belts for this kit, so we've got the counter belt, which we can sneak on first. Good, and I'll just bring this into frame so you can see the counter going. So it's going backwards there and spinning forwards there. Not too tight, not putting too much pressure on the actual mechanism, on the spindle, so that's great. Happy with that one. And then we'll turn this over. Sneak the main belt now through the gap, like so. So now's the time to start putting it back together. And that'll be a case of lining up the actuators, making sure that the cables are running in the right place, and getting that screwed back together with those 3 screws that we've got. And then we've just got to reconnect the motor. Good stuff. Okay, so the tape deck is prepared. Now just got to bring back in the chassis. Keep the cables out of the way. So we've got the power leads here just to one side. And then we've got the speaker cables we want to move out, plus the VU meter, plus the condenser mic. Okay, that's in place, and I've just checked the ejector mechanism works okay. Marvellous. So basically we've just got to sort this spaghetti out now. So all that remains is for me to review the pictures and see where all of these different cables solder back onto the board, and I'll be back shortly. Hopefully I'll be ready to put the case back together and give it a try. Rightio, so quick idiot check then. We've got the speaker positive and negative on. We've got the battery VU positive and negative on. We've also got the main negative to the board and the positive to the board. We've got the condenser microphone positive and earth. We've got the motor positive and earth. That's it. So the only loose wires now are the actual supplies to the board that come from the battery compartment. So I think we've got a go situation. All I need to do now is put the screws back in. So we've got the 2 machine screws right in the top edge just there. We've got one, I think, just to the casing, one that goes inside there, and one on the motor mount. Get those in, we should be in business. I'm just stopping for a quick coffee before I put 6 volts in the back of this thing and see if it works. So on that note, if you do fancy stopping by the Buy Me a Coffee page, it'd be much appreciated. Help out with the consumables, belts and that sort of thing. And yeah, great stuff. I'll see you over there. But anyway, let's just have a quick sip of coffee and then we'll see if it works. Alright, so it's all put back together. All of the cables I think are soldered in the right place now, and I've just hooked up some auxiliary power. So I think the first thing we'll do is just give it a quick test to make sure it's running okay, and then we'll give it a deep polish, and that should be that. Right, I'm just going to turn off the lights real quick because the FM doesn't like the LED lights. I'm going to turn them off. And we'll just see if the radio works. Who's gonna have your back? It's all good when you Good stuff. So I've just put the lights back on now, so we know the radio's working. Of course, we know the tuner dial and all that was all good because we pilfered that radio section from the other unit. So let's try the tape then, and eject nice and strong. Might not be able to play you much because the content matches, but let's see how we get on. So we'll keep an eye on the counter. I'll reset that to 0 and play. And let's have a look, fast forward. Nice. Rewind. Again, nice and smooth, and play. Lovely. Eject. We'll just turn that over and play. Good. Okay, and the VU meter's working okay, and yeah, happy with that. So what else? That's it really. I think we'll just give it a decent deep clean, get rid of some of this grime, polish up the handles, etc. And yeah, job's a good one. So here it is then, the 9415 LSB from JVC from the mid-1970s. Lovely little radio cassette recorder in the end. I think you'll agree it's polished up absolutely beautifully. Now we had two of these, of course, if you remember, especially from part one of this video, where we took in two different units. One had a broken casing but generally kind of worked. The other one had a much nicer external casing, but there were issues with it. For example, the tuner cord didn't move. There was a broken pulley on the radio board. So what did we do then? Well, basically stripped them both down, tried to find the best of both worlds, as it were. So we found a nice cassette mech there. We've cleaned the idlers, we've changed the belts, cleaned the heads, the capstan, the pinch roller, degreased it and re-lubed the mech, and checked everything over there. So that's all gone back in. Also, we've taken the other radio board out, which had the good tuner cord arrangement in it, and hopefully now that should work. So I think what we'll do is try the radio first, just to make sure everything's okay. And I've just turned out the lights just to help with the FM signal.
To be true, take me all night. You're right.
Because this still has to go through the other half of Parliament, the House of Lords, aren't elected to become law. We've been hearing more from Rishi Sunak today.
What also goes with that news story, as always, we put the common existed, but it was probably carrying about 50,000, I guess. Yes, I mean, it is a small gesture, but my wife...
So you can see the radio is absolutely gorgeous on this. Don't get so much on the AM these days, but the FM is really sensitive and it's very selective as well. There's no real crossover or interference. So many stations that just picked up. So I think it might be time in a second to try the cassette out. So just a quick recap then. We've given everything a deep clean, a polish. We've had the mech out, given that a service. We've taken the radio board out of the other example, and that's all in there and working nicely. So this is just a prime example of what you can do if perhaps you're just getting into the hobby of restoring radio cassettes and vintage audio. Sometimes it's nice just to be able to play around and take parts out and substitute them, or maybe you've got something that's of sentimental value to you and you haven't quite figured out how to fix it yet, but you might be able to get hold of an old one to be able to use it for parts. So rather than actually getting into the minutiae of repairing it, sometimes substituting parts can be a really useful way of actually kind of getting to fix it. So whilst I'm whittering on here, what I've actually just been doing is recording a little bit of something. So let's have a little listen and see how that microphone's worked. So we know that rewind works. Substitute them, or maybe you've got something that's of sentimental value to you and you haven't quite figured out how to fix it yet, but you might want to be able to get hold of it. There we go. So we've got the record works okay, the fast forward, rewind and play. This is just a prime example of what you can do. I'll turn the mic round. into the hobby of restoring radio cassettes and vintage audio, sometimes it's nice just to be able to play around and take parts out and substitute them. There we go. So happy days. Really pleased with that overall, actually. I think, you know, the tapes are working nicely, the radio sounds really good, and she looks beautiful. So that's another one that's salvaged at least. With regard to the broken one, I've actually already gone ahead and serviced this second mech, so that'll be ready to go in. I still need to look at the broken pulley on the radio board just there, but we'll get that sorted in due course and probably make a working one out of the other one. But at least for now, we've got a really pretty example. It's in full working order, so really pleased with that. We'll call that a little win. And thank you very much indeed for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Please check out some of my other videos. I'll be back soon, but in the meantime, stay safe and all the best for now. Thanks again. Bye bye.